what was nimble speedboat becomes like a pretty gargantuan aircraft carrier.
I've never heard a workout called delightful.
I don't know why they can't figure out search over their own documents.
Which is ironic because it's Google.
I want to make sure that Notion like makes it easier for them to do what they're doing. Can they estimate in a way that like we do? Trying to get me to use a calendar. Like, why? So black and white calendar. Awesome. So I fought to get focused on the list, and then they didn't do well, which has never happened, but they didn't do well. So
So we've all heard nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. It usually is the safe choice, but is it really? Like, why do companies hire big consultancies, and why do they deliver usually disappointing outcomes?
You know, the safety, quote unquote, in hiring a big consultancy is you're kind of asking them to absorb risk, right? So if I hire an IBM and they bring in IBM branded hardware and IBM branded consultants, like the risk I have, if that epically fails, it's sort of mitigated. I can just point my finger at IBM and be like, you didn't deliver, right? I think the problem with that and why the results come off as disappointing is that you've offloaded potentially some really important, specific things that your business needs to do. And all of a sudden somebody else has the keys. They're driving the car.
Yep.
Right. And so now what you're faced with is I didn't get what I bought. Like I didn't get what I paid for, mainly because they will never understand your business to the degree that you need them to. Right. I think it's also interesting too. I kind of think about getting pulled into like the IBM orbit. It's like once you're pulled into that gravity well, like you can't get out. Right. You're pretty stuck. Like you're going to be wedged because they offer that top to bottom like service. Right.
To me, it's all about procurement. Like it's a huge portion of this. Like a lot of companies set up a procurement process, whether it's super lean or super complex, in order to remove potential fraud, misgiving, inside dealing between a vendor and the company itself. So these companies, they put together a approved services and vendor list, and they pre-negotiate pricing, and they do all these other things. And so IBM is on every one of those lists. So is Deloitte, so is Slalom, Accenture. Like these guys, they spend tons of time and energy getting onto these lists. They know how to do it, and they negotiate it. And that procurement process to get a new person onto that list is actually really difficult. And so it requires a VP or an internal champion to really come to bat. Like they have to come out and say like, no, focused is incredible. These guys have the right skills. And what procurement's job is, like what they actually are paid to do, is to say, are they really that different, or can we just use like an approved vendor? Like why focused, and why this other little consulting company? And a champion can get that thing through, but it requires an extraordinary amount of work compared to a large, already on the list services provider. And even at the very beginning, they're like sticking their neck. This champion is sticking their neck out there, fighting for something that is against like the norm of the company culture, or like it's not approved. We need to get it approved. We need an exception to a rule, something like that. And so then if it fails, like if the focused fails, if the small consulting company you went and fought to get onto the approved vendor list and got a new rate card put up for and a new master services agreement signed for, if they don't do well, you spent all this time and energy and social capital and everything inside of your existing organization fighting for this, and it doesn't work. So everybody goes, see, I told you so. See, I told you so. It didn't work. You should be using. So unless the vendor is extraordinary, it's counterproductive, and even sometimes like it's counterproductive, and even sometimes like too risky for someone to stick their neck out and fight for another vendor. So then why does IBM get undersized results? Because they don't have to fight to win. Like if I'm, and they would, I mean, IBM, I don't want to pick on just IBM, but like these large services firms, because they're on these lists, because they have the access, because they have that, the work comes to them through a more predictable procurement process. And so they don't have to push or edge or try anything difficult. And so as a champion or someone hiring a vendor, I can say, well, I picked off the approved services list. They checked off all my procurement or all of my like criteria for a good project. Procurement had already approved them and they still didn't do well. So it's not my fault. It's their fault. If no one on our vendor list, met the requirements of this project. So I fought to get focused on the list and then they didn't do well, which has never happened. But if they didn't do well, so we need to fire them. Like, well, why didn't you just use IBM? And IBM doesn't have to, can say, well, we can put, we can train people on accounts, we can get more people, we can do a bunch of stuff so that they don't have to like fight through that vendor list. They're still on that list, even if they have a failed contract. You read about Accenture getting sued by Hertz because they didn't deliver a large project and settling. But then, like, I'm guessing Accenture is still selling into Hertz. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing someone at Accenture is calling on it and they're going to get back in there. They just know, that they don't need to be exceptional to survive.
I didn't have bagging on IBM and Accenture on my bingo card this year, but boing, just checked it off. So that's cool.
I mean, they do cool stuff, but I think sometimes like these large consulting companies, they don't like, they're not scrappy. They deliver a really predictable process. They sell a more clearly defined and like clearly defined and very prescriptive product, even as a service. Like, we're going to come in, and a lot of times also, we talked a little bit about this in an earlier episode, but a lot of times they're selling a commodity. They're selling bodies, not like a value. They'd say they are, and get an IBM guy to come in here and talk to us, but like, I think that a lot of times they're like, how do I get more people on that? They also have entrenched technology, IBM specifically, but all of them have entrenched technology. So like, IBM owns the license to this software. They're the only people allowed to change it. So like, they know that they have a captive, there's no competition. They have a captive piece of software. They're the only people that can make changes to it. So like, why do I need to like fight for survival?
And it's pretty similar. You talked about, putting warm bodies from the IBM's perspective, and also the products that they sell, they're commoditized, right? They're standardized. You could say the same thing about, selling design. The way you sell design is you sell design thinking, or you sell the double diamond. But design projects are never that simple. Like, you have to understand like what the context is in. It's not just a linear path from discovery all the way to delivery. Like, it's like a winding path. But the diagram looks sexy, right? Like, it sells. Like, it's easier to sell. You can come in and say, hey, you know what, this actually is going to require some work. So Micah, to your point, it goes back to you're trading control or you're trading risk for control.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I never thought about it from a commodity standpoint, as far as if I bring in the infrastructure, the actual hardware sometimes that run the workloads, and I'm the expert, and you're signing up for that completely, you're getting this real specialization of managing, maintaining all of those things. And so, yeah, I mean, the proprietary nature of it, like, it's kind of genius, really, if you think about it. Like,
it's an even better land and expand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We own the whole thing. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, not only land expand, but we've like, sunk our talons in at like the infrastructure level. Again, we're not talking on IBM, but they sunk our talons in at the like infrastructure level. We license who can change this code. No one can change it except for someone who's an IBM staffer. And so like, then we create a change management process that is arduous and different than like being lean. And I think this stuff happens so naturally at organizations. Like, it's not on purpose. No one starts a startup and is like, man, I want a really arduous change management process where IBM does 100% of the work. And, we're on, essentially a perpetual contract with them. What happens is like a company builds something, and like all things, something goes wrong. And then when that thing goes wrong, they say, cool, how do we prevent this thing from going wrong? So they add process, some rule, governance, change management, contract. And that feels really good because mitigating risk feels really good. You're like, cool, now this will never happen again. And then we do it again. We release another product. We're still going pretty fast. It breaks again. We add another process. Release product, breaks again, add more process. Slowly the process balloons to the point where what was a nimble speedboat becomes like a pretty gargantuan aircraft carrier because of all the governance, all the change management, all the things, and all the communication. And that compounding bureaucratic process also removes accountability from the people that work inside these organizations. So if I'm a champion at a startup, or I'm a super ambitious person at a startup, what measures my really good work? It's often the direct results that the company get. Did I create more value for the company? Did we release a new product? Did something happen? If I'm a really ambitious person at a 40,000 person mega firm, not IBM, but think a Ford or a Cisco or something like that, the way my ambition manifests itself is by climbing a corporate ladder. And the way I climb a corporate ladder is not taking undue risk. Instead, I do things that continue to hit reasonably ambitious goals year over year, and I climb that ladder. And I think that I follow the processes. I don't do it by pissing people off and going around the process.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth it for these nimble consultancies then to expend that time and energy going either around the procurement process or through the procurement process to work on these projects because if there's such pressure put on them to deliver or being seen as unworthy if let's say it fails?
100% worth it. You need a really good champion. Someone has to say, I'm going to step outside of the ladder. I'm going to sit down with my boss and explain over and over and over again why I think focused is a better choice than slalom. And sometimes the boss will say no, and they have to keep going, and the boss keeps saying no, and they keep pushing, and the boss keeps saying no, and then the boss finally says, okay, fine. And then they have to go do that exact same thing again with the procurement team. But if you have that champion, the other thing that's awesome is they're so invested all the way through the procurement process because they've done incredible amounts of work, incredible amounts of political capital expended in the enterprise to get a new vendor added to a list sometimes, that they are so invested in the success of your project. It's almost like a good bet that you're going to be successful to begin with because they're betting on you. They're going to put the work in. They put it all in, put all this in at the beginning. So they're going to stay invested through the project versus with IBM, they're here, take the keys, drive the car. I got you through. Now I can just check that off and I move on with my rest of my job.
I think that's a really interesting call out because it's probably kind of a maverick type.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Who brings that in? Yeah, totally. The people who are probably disrupting a lot in that space, they're probably doing some incredible work because they're willing to make a risky bet.
Yep.
Right. And so it's interesting. I wonder, it doesn't seem super common. We kind of see it as climbing that ladder, being in that scenario. You don't have room to do that. But I think we've seen some success with that. So, having those relationships with those kind of mavericks. Right.
And then that pressure, such a stupid thing to say, but pressure makes diamonds. God, I just had to say it.
You haven't said shift left yet, so
shift. But that pressure from them, the fact that that they're investing, when we get these big enterprise accounts and we work through them, we get through the procurement process and we fight and we argue, or maybe not fight and argue, but we justify and we make case and we go through all this process of finally getting onto a vendor list and finally starting a project. We are you feel the pressure to do a great job, and we feel it with every client, but with these big accounts, when you're going up against behemoths like an IBM, like an EY, it's different.
Yeah.
Someone truly is putting their career on the line. Now, can you get fired for hiring IBM? Probably, but no one's going to be like, the reason we're letting you go is because you hired IBM to do this job. It's like you kept pushing something that was going wrong for too long, where a small mistake from a company like ours can be way more catastrophic to someone's career. And there's truth in these enterprises. Like these enterprises have like the memories like elephants. Like you make one mistake early in your career at a large enterprise and you're like in your 17th year and it's coming up in a performance review.
Right.
Like, well, you remember when you brought in the consulting company Focused and they, like, they're like, well, that was 17 years ago. Like people know these enterprises, they blackball like single decisions if they go against the norms of the organization.
At Focused, we think big without acting bloated. If you're tired of paying for prestige instead of results, head over to focus.io and let's create some meaningful progress together. All right, let's get back into it.
All right, so in this next segment, I want to talk about a company that succeeded precisely because they didn't go the traditional hiring a big consultancy route. And Austin actually mentioned them in a previous episode, and the company is 37 Signals. Micah, I'd like to ask you, what's your take on this?
37 Signals is a really good example of an organization that has really strong opinions, and they marry that with grit and determination,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not afraid of sharing their opinions. Now, whether you agree with them or not, you're never going to get away from the opinion sharing with them, right? But objectively, I mean, think about it. They said like the cloud is ridiculous. It's too expensive, right? So they actually migrated away from the cloud and now they run their own on-prem like servers, right? Like who does that? That sounds like complete insanity this day and age to a lot of folks. But they did the math and then they had the strong opinion that it wasn't adding value. And then they just talk really loudly about it too, which I think could put some people off. I think they're an exemplar and like a master class on bootstrapping a business, making it successful without having to take funding, and then really solving real problems for users. They're almost like boring tech, which is some of those things are really great, right? Like I'm building an email service. I'm building like Basecamp, for like project management and stuff, like even a great direct competitor to Slack at like really reasonable prices. And they're wildly successful in that. So take what you will. If you do or don't like DHH, like I can sympathize, but I think if you just look objectively at the company itself, it's pretty fantastic.
They are exceptional. 37, they're just exceptional. They're culturally exceptional. They're positionally exceptional. They're technically exceptional. But, I think, and they've made this decision as part of what makes them successful, is they aren't massive. And so as organizations grow, I said this before, but like you start adding policy and procedure to prevent risk. And then the other thing that happens is as you add people, you have to add like every management layer is what it is truly an abstraction that sits inside of a giant corporate system to like interface communication so I'm a manager, I have engineering manager, I have 10 people that sit below me. I interface those 10 people communication up to my leader, and I interface my leader's communication down to them. Now I'm on a team of 10 and I have a manager. Same thing happens. We get now, I have 5 managers, so I have 50 people rolling up to 1, and then I go again and I go again and I go again. And every one of those layers of abstraction create like lack of focus. They create like opportunities for misalignment. They create all these other things. And 37 Signals doesn't have that. Like they've intentionally made that decision, which is why they're so incredible at these things, and I think so productive. I mean the like moving off the cloud, building in Rails, not doing microservices, all these things, like we all get influenced. Like we're all on X, we're at TechCon, we're not on X, or we're on some socials or whatever, but like you're at tech conferences, you get a whole bunch of people saying like, oh, the new thing is agentic, or the new thing is microservices, or the new thing is, cloud migration. And, everybody's kind of glomming onto that because there's momentum. And so you see a whole bunch of momentum around it, which builds more momentum. And so then as an engineer at someplace like a big enterprise. We'll pick on, I don't know who we want to pick on, GM. We'll pick on GM. I'm an engineer at a big enterprise like GM, like a really easy sale because I know my boss and my boss's boss are also getting influenced the same as me. It's like convince to do something like a cloud migration. Oh, look, everybody's going to Amazon. Then Amazon's spending a bunch of money to convince us that it's a good deal too. And Amazon salespeople are there bringing us dinner or to dinner, and they're, sending us white papers on how it's such a good idea and all this stuff. DHH and his team and Jason, what they've done is they really returned to first principles. And they've said, why do we make these decisions? We don't go to the cloud because like everybody's going to the cloud, and we don't inherently trust necessarily the content that a cloud provider is giving us to tell us why the cloud is good. Instead, what is the value of going to the cloud? And from what I understand on their cloud exit is like they weren't getting the value of being in the cloud, which is this like, the dynamic nature of workloads, the scale up, scale down, the like all of the like kind of I can plug into a Kafka with 2 clicks. Like they have a really, like you said, a little bit boring tech, but they have, a handful of apps that run forever, and they are scaling at a reasonable rate, and it's an incredible business. But the cloud provided no real value and had extraordinary costs. The other thing they did that I just absolutely think is awesome, and it shows the same on the other side, is like their Campfire product. So they have this thing called Once, and their Campfire product is a Slack competitor. It's like a chat app. I forget how much it is. I think it's like $200, but it's $200 for a lifetime license for software.
Yeah.
Like
that's wild.
How many, like, and everybody in the world is like SaaS, monthly subscription. Like, God, you can subscribe to socks now. Like, and like, they're like, no. Like, if you want the new features, you can buy the next version. But this version, it's $200. You run it yourself. It sits in yours. It's your code. We'll even show you how the code works. We'll walk you through the software itself. And I think that like that first principles of like, why are we delivering this? What do we stand on is a really incredible decision. And they didn't go the IBM route. And I think they didn't need to, because they had people who were accountable to the results of their customers, not to the results or the feelings of their boss.
I think that it's a cultural value, that kind of scrappiness, that high opinionated kind of talking loudly about things. And it permeates not just their tech. Like, they also released their product management practice for basically free. Shape Up, right? They use that. And like lots of teams have adopted that. I've worked on a couple of teams that were using Shape Up for that. And I think you get the real perspective from interacting with that. So I don't know, Shahid, that seems kind of like not normal for people to release their product strategy, like how they actually build products. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I wonder if there's a bit of survivorship bias going on here. Because, I mean, Base 37 Signals did it, and they were successful, which is why we're talking about them. Like, are there examples of companies that have tried it but haven't been able to do it? Or is that risk so great that it just feels safer to go the IBM route?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know of a much, highly regarded, like I haven't seen a lot of failures in that space that are still talked about. Right. And so I don't know. I think it's just, there's some kind of special sauce there in the founders and the way they approach things. And yeah, I mean, they're the ones that are doing it, right? So I think what that actually tells you is, because there's not examples of 600 of these places that have tried that and failed.
Okay. We've talked about how safe choices can quietly ruin projects because big firms often don't have the customer in mind. In this last segment, I'm going to put a popular app under the microscope and talk about what works, what misses, and what certain UX decisions delight or frustrate users. And I want to start, and today we're going to talk about Notion. So, Austin, I know you have some pretty strong takes about Notion, so
Here
I
we
can
go.
start with you.
Let's go. No, we have Notion at Focused, and like it has been nice, but I wanted like strong opinion is it's a pretty expensive wiki. We were talking about hiring big consulting companies, and like the reason someone hires a big consulting firm is because they're risk averse. It's like they're proven by the organization themselves, and that the same is true for like enterprise tool choices. So like people buy Confluent or something because like they are proven they don't have risky tech inside of them. It's like it's a safe bet. Everybody has Confluent, so let's use Confluent. Notion is a little bit different because it's a bit of a startup and all that kind of stuff. And we bought it. But these tools, when you buy them, similar to a consulting company, they find a way to get like to build permanence into your organization.
I think they call that stickiness.
That's what they call it. I think they want the stickiness. Of course, like I don't have an interest in being sticky. I, as a consultant, want to deprecate myself, and I want my tools. I don't want to be so dependent on my tool that every year they raise prices or they change something, and like they move some feature from the pro tier to the enterprise tier or whatever it is. Like I'm now beholden to the next tier of pricing. And so with Notion, we use it as like a company knowledge base. So it is like all the company's knowledge sits into one thing. And I think there are some really cool things about that app. The first is they did RAG really well. So that retrieval augmented generation, like the AI tools they added feel really nice inside of Notion. It's a good search. It finds stuff, but I just don't see.
You're in a safe space, just in front of millions of people or something.
I don't, it's a wiki. And like, it's a place for people to go and edit stuff. It has all the same problems as every wiki I've ever seen, which is like, as soon as documentation is added, it's immediately outdated. It's too searchable. There's too much history, like all that kind of stuff. Like it doesn't solve a lot of those core problems. And instead they have a lot of flashy features that convince you early on that are going to solve your problems. And this actually is probably what I should have been talking about the whole time. So the complaining about Notion is we buy tools. Like I want to lose some weight. And so I buy a Peloton, right? But like, it's not the Peloton that makes me like go to the gym. Normally when people buy a Peloton or buy a new piece of exercise equipment, they use it for 3 or 6 months or so, and then it sits and collects dust, or they hang their clothes on it.
Right. That's
because
what
like
elliptical is. Yeah.
And all these tools, same when we buy a tool like Notion for our company, they have all these features that look like they're going to solve like organizational problems. There's an EOS book sitting behind me, and like it is like, oh, if I just put in Notion, then all of my teams will know what all the other teams are doing. Oh, if I just buy Notion, then we can have like collaborative docs and publish a page to the internet about how to get into our Chicago office. And it's like, well, if we're not documenting the stuff to begin with, if we're not actually working out, like the Peloton's not going to make us get fit. If we're not actually documenting stuff in a good way, Notion's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to be a subscription and like a dumping ground of stuff. But we can talk about individual features, and I think that's what you want to do. But like overall, meh.
I don't know. It's interesting because it sounds like the issue you have with the promises unkept. Is it because it's a SaaS product and that's how they have to make revenue by changing, by upcharging for certain things? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there as to like what you have problems with. So yeah, maybe we should recenter on like the UX.
Like I'm curious because you brought up the Peloton example, but can you fault Peloton for a person not working out? I mean, it's doing its job. Like it's good at getting you through the workout, making it delightful, right? Like but if that mindset, if that routine isn't there.
I have my 100-day Peloton shirt, and the second I hit 100 days, never rode that thing. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. I have that shirt. I'm super happy with it. I no longer fit into that shirt.
Yeah, I've never heard a workout called delightful. But
there's maybe delightful is not the right word.
No, it's
like
great.
Less friction,
right?
Like it gets you. Look, for working out, it's a pain, right? Like it's a pain that you have to get through to achieve like an end goal, which is to look better, lose weight, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
That's like the end goal. And you could say for Notion, like calling it wiki is simplistic, right? It's
honest.
Okay. Okay. But you would have to ask teams, would they use Notion or would they use Confluence? Because the pain is going to be much more if they use Confluence. Like they would get, like I would bet teams would be slower, get stuck more, or just not even document things because if they were forced to use Confluence. At least Notion, with the way their UX is set up, allows you to reduces that friction in getting information, having that information get to the right places at the right time is good at what it does.
It is.
Yeah.
Which is actually it's not that good at what it does because it's a notepad that lags. But come on, is it that good at what it does? Like it doesn't have opinions. I think good tools have strong opinions about how to. If the problem it's trying to solve is how do you organize the information in your organization, Notion doesn't do that well. It's really like there's 100 features that I think Notion has that we don't even touch because the learning curve is so high. Like we don't use like shared databases for our exec meetings and for our leadership meetings and stuff.
Right.
We literally copy paste like into like a little accordion thing of every meeting to record the L10s. But like I know Notion has templates. And we could have a template in a database and we could have it linked up to the calendar and it could have Zapier and all that stuff. The truth is that like we don't need all of those things because we've been taking great L10 notes. And what we're doing with Notion is we're paying for all of those other features. And I'm going to bring this full circle and take you totally off the rails on accident. But I'm like in the age of, you said this to me in a one-on-one and none of the people in the audience or Mike wasn't there was like, that we're in the age of like, software at the speed of thought, or is SaaS dead? Like we don't use 80% of Notion's features, but we pay for all of those. We pay for 100% of those. Can I generate Notion now?
For
these micro SaaSes where it's a shared note taking that has some hierarchical structure of documents, and I don't need Zapier integrations, and I don't need OAuth SSO mumbo jumbo, and I don't need payments integrations, and I don't need any of that other stuff. I need a notepad.
Would you be open to a pay for what you use model?
It'd be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, they might be able to pivot into that. I mean,
isn't that most of how tiered SaaS works?
Right.
Gated premium features kind of thing.
But you still get all or nothing, right? I mean, tiers are usually limited to what, like 4 or 5 tiers, so you still get quite a bit. But like, so let's say you only pay for the features that you do use.
Huh.
Yeah, I think there's a company. I forget what they're called, 80/20 or something, that's doing this, and they're not quite doing the pay what you use, but they're doing 80% of the features at 20% the cost, and so they're just replicating SaaS companies, but not having kind of the like, why do you need AI? Like I said, I like the AI in Notion actually, but like, why do you need certain features in Notion? Like this whole complex database management thing, but it's not really a database, so you can't really use it. They can't do math in the cells. It's really like,
you can.
Oh,
yeah. See, I don't know that.
See, we're not power users.
Yeah, not a
Chad.
Yeah, dang. Throw out Google Sheets then.
I do like writing on it, but it's literally the only thing I use it for. Is like I like the interaction between literally typing on the page is great. And then that's about as deep as I go.
They have these blocks. Like if you try to like edit things, it's like all in this weird block. So you have to like move it around. It's like
I've just been desensitized to
try to move an image in Notion. It gives you flashbacks to trying to move an image in Microsoft Word and like shifts the entire page. Like, I'm sorry, Notion, please sponsor the.
Yeah. We're looking for sponsors, Notion./deploy. Maybe you can give us a discount too. Who knows?
Did you know that Spotify is one of the largest podcast platforms today? If you're one of the millions of people that listen to their music and their shows over on Spotify, just make sure to follow us there. Just search ./deploy and tap follow to never miss an episode. Now let's get back to it.
All right. If you have to compare like what Notion does in terms of note taking, wiki and all that, have you seen any other products that are similar or kind of achieve the same things as Notion?
So we started with Notion because we were putting everything in Google Docs and discoverability was really tough, and we had an employee,
which is ironic because it's Google.
Yeah, well, I don't know why they can't figure out search over their own documents. That's like it's almost like it must be a comic, like a comic. There's an internal joke or something. Like we can search the entire internet and find exactly what you're looking for in microseconds, but good luck finding this exact word in your Google Docs.
Yeah.
We were using Google Docs. Discoverability was super difficult. Organization was tedious, and so we were like, okay, let's try Notion. It makes sense. Like we should have a little bit of a wiki. Employee handbook is in there, that kind of stuff. But now our Notion like is equally, like, discovery is also hard. Now we have even more sprawl because we have like our statements of work are in Google Docs because that's where they need to be, and then but they are sometimes linked in Notion, but an old version is linked in Notion that no longer exists because the link doesn't get kept up. So like sprawl gets to be like this big problem, and then you don't know where to look for actual truth. We bought it because we thought it would solve problems, and it like I've just pulled up their webpage. Like, we're roasting them in a way that probably is all good. Like all your projects, calendars, roadmaps, and more in one tool. Like we don't have that, and we've tried.
I do like the Unix software design philosophy, right? Do one thing really well, really small.
I think the power of Notion, for me at least, is on my personal Notion, I run my entire second brain, like all of the knowledge that I collect, even this podcast, like the notes that I'm taking from the podcast are in my Notion, right? So I have like all my notes, and then I transferred them into the Google Docs. But I think the search is phenomenal. Like it gets me exactly
search is phenomenal.
Yeah, it gets me exactly the things that I need. And if you have a structure, if you I mean, hopefully, eventually in the future, you don't need to organize anything because everything is searchable. But I don't think you can fault the tool for you not having the right process.
That was actually my point. Is like,
yeah,
people buy the tool because they think the tool will give them process, but the tool is it's so much white space. It's like, we have had sales teams say, if I only had a CRM,
right,
then I'd be able to like close and manage all the deals. And you're like, well, the CRM doesn't sell for you.
Mm-hmm.
It just tracks it. And like, is the problem that we have deals that we're like forgetting to follow up on? No.
right.
Is it the problem that we have deals that like we don't remember the contact information of the lead from? No. So like the CRM isn't going to solve our problem. Mm-hmm. So what's the problem? Oh, we're not actually sending the follow-up email. HubSpot doesn't send the follow-up email. It just is like another database to put your contact information into. Mm-hmm. That's where my you can get fit like lifting concrete blocks, or you can, buy a really nice weight set and it can be connected to the internet and have all this subscription. But like in both of those, you got to work out. And I would rather teams prove that they're working out, that they have process. And then you say, how does the tool amplify your existing process versus this tool is going to give me my answer?
Yeah, that's a great call out. You can't, just like we talked about offloading responsibility when you hire these big firms and things, right? You can't offload your core processes to a tool and expect to get good results. Like they can augment it, but they can't define it for you.
Yeah. And that's exactly the parallel I was going to go into next, was it seems like if we use that same parallel, like Notion has landed and expanded, right?
Yeah, it has.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, now how do we...
Keep trying to get me to use a calendar. Like, why? Why?
So
black and white calendar. Awesome.
So there's two paths here. One is, you do start working out, right? You start working out and you prove that process, and then you look at, okay, let's see how Notion is useful. Or you look at, okay, how do I untangle myself away from Notion? Like, what would your approach be in that scenario?
So I, last summer, at the beginning of the summer, I went down to Fleet Feet and got my feet 3D scanned. It's really cool. They put you in this thing, they 3D scan it, they put it up on a TV, and they show your arches and all these other things. And I bought these incredible trail running shoes because I was going to go trail running. I have trail run exactly 0 times. Like literally 0. And I spent all this time. You know what I should have done? I should have taken the freaking Nikes I had in my closet and gone trail running.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those shoes don't make me a runner. They didn't. Like, the Notion doesn't make your team more organized. It can help your team organize in a way that they're already doing it. That's my complaint about tool purchasing in general, is like people think the tool is the answer. The process, the culture, the people, that's the answer. The tool then becomes an automation around that. It works for AI too, because like we're gonna use AI to solve like good design, but if you don't know what good design or good vision for your like your design will be, AI will just kind of do whatever the heck it wants. And so like you need to have process already in place. You need to be actually already running, and then you can go buy your running shoes and you'll run a little bit faster.
Yeah.
My dad, I had a good skis. I love skiing. It's like my big passion. And I skied on the exact same set of skis that I got for my 16th birthday until last year. I'm 37.
That's awesome.
And I went and bought new skis, and the guy was like, the guy who sold me my new skis was like, good skis make great skiers ski easier, and bad skiers still ski bad. Like, the skis don't make the skier.
It's the same thing with the golf club analogy too. Like
Yeah.
I had my brother gave me a set of old golf clubs. I still don't know how to play, by the way. I'm still at
All the failed hobbies in this group.
I'm at the driving range. I'm using the 7-iron to hit, and getting maybe 70 yards or so, like maybe less. I don't know, but my brother uses the same exact thing, and he's able to hit 120 plus every single time.
Wow.
Right? Consistently, right? It's you need to know how to use that tool.
So when we think about Notion's features, what I want to do when we buy tools, and I'm sitting here scrolling Notion on my iPad, and like there's cool stuff in here, but I want to say like, okay, my team, the way we manage backlogs is like small stories, no sprints, truly iterative. And so I want to make sure that Notion like makes it easier for them to do what they're doing. Can they estimate in a way that like we do? If Notion makes it easier, if the tool makes it easier to do what we are already doing, then it's a really good tool. If it's like we are not doing this, and if I buy this tool, like, oh man, I'm not fit, so I'm gonna go buy a Peloton, I'm essentially just buying another piece of furniture.
On the next episode, we are unpacking why software migrations fail so frequently and how your team can beat the odds. From overlooked details to underestimating complexity, we'll cover it all. If you're planning a migration, subscribe now. You won't want to miss this one.
Remember to respect the craft. Evolution doesn't require chaos, and teams will always beat heroes. Cheers.